38% of Americans have diabetes or pre-diabetes, and 8 out of 10 of them are unaware that they have pre-diabetes. Now that's just a random stat, but I was one of those 8 out of 10 people. I would consider myself pretty healthy. So I was very, very alarmed when I did my blood work and it came back that I was pre-diabetic when I go to the gym 5 days a week, I eat only whole foods, I do everything right, I do cardio, I do all these things, and yet I was pre-diabetic. And I was so confused as to why. So in this video today, I'm going to share with you what actually caused me to be pre-diabetic, how I was able to actually fix it, and basically how you can apply this to yourself. If you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, or you're even aware that you have it, you can actually use this. And I think that this would drastically help people in America in general, okay? And so it doesn't matter if you're fit or healthy or not, you can still have pre-diabetes, and that will hurt your gains. That will actually hurt your ability to gain muscle. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get straight into the video. Preface, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist. I don't have all the technical information behind this. This is just my personal experience and the things that I've learned from doing a little bit of research, okay? So first things first, I did my blood work and my A1C, hemoglobin A1C, it came back at 5.7. The pre-diabetes line is 5.6. I'm not going to get into the technicalities here, but basically the higher this is, the more insulin resistant you are. And again, so I was pretty thrown off whenever this came back and I really didn't even understand what caused it, but learning about what it is, it became pretty apparent pretty quick. Now I was able to lower my A1C to 5.1 in a pretty short period of time. I think it was only about 3 to 4 months in between my different blood work here, and I have the proof to show you here. How I became insulin resistant in the first place, and maybe why you could be as well. I did a long bulk for 2 years to be exact, where I was absolutely pounding food. You know, I'm trying to push 3,000, 4,000 calories at the very end to grow as much muscle as possible. And after that bulk ended, I still continued to eat in a similar way, even if it was a little bit less calories, I was still eating in the same way. And so the biggest culprit, in my opinion, was just white rice. I was eating white rice literally up to 4 times per day at pretty high quantities. Sometimes it was pasta, sometimes it was other things, but white rice was my go-to. It was just the one that I digested the best and I just felt the best with. So I was eating a ton of white rice. White rice is basically just sugar, the way that your body processes it. And so it was just a huge glucose spike every time I would eat it, which was multiple times per day. Since rice has no fiber, it basically just goes right through you and it gives you a huge glucose spike. So that was basically like the main culprit in my opinion. But there was another big one here, which is eating too frequently. Every time you eat, you have a glucose spike. And so the more frequently you eat, the more glucose spikes you're having. When you're someone like me who has a small appetite and you're not really able to put down a lot of food, I had to spread the meals out more and have smaller meals so that way I could actually get all the food that I needed in. Sometimes I was eating, 4 times a day and maybe having a shake. And so I'm having these basically constant glucose spikes from morning to night. I'd have to eat first thing in the morning so that way I could actually get all the food in. So basically combining that with white rice and eating all the time, I'm just destroying my insulin response. And I probably did that pretty consistently for 4 years straight, which is again the reason why this happened. Now, last but not least is I got fatter during my bulk. Obviously I bulked for a long time. I put on 55 pounds in 2 years. And so probably half of that was body fat. The more body fat you have, the more insulin resistant you become. And ironically, the more insulin resistant you become, the fatter you become. So it's like a very vicious cycle, as you can see here. I also believe that this stunted my ability to grow muscle as well, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Before I do though, let's talk about how I fixed it. First thing, which was just eating less white rice, probably not super surprising. I really only eat white rice probably about 1 time per day, absolute max 2, but that's very uncommon. I pretty much nowadays have just swapped white rice for like black beans, for instance. So I'm getting in fiber, whole wheat bread, potatoes, stuff like that. And so I've been able to do that. And I've also had much better gut health since switching to higher fiber foods as well. So that's a whole other topic, but again, another benefit here. So just eating less white rice. So super easy fix. If you're eating anything like that, like even I think white potatoes, I think technically could have a similar response. If you're just slamming any carbs like that, that's what's going to cause it. So just switch to like higher, more fibrous carbs. That helps a lot. Next is I went into a long cut. So I've been cutting for like 6 months now. I've probably lost, 5, 6, maybe 7% body fat over this amount of time. And so as I was in this long cut, of course, I'm able to eat less food as well, which means less carbs, which I think obviously benefited that. And because I was in a lower deficit, I could start fasting. So I was doing intermittent fasting to where I would not eat from, say I wake up in the morning at 7 maybe not eat until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, maybe even 3 o'clock. So I have this really long period of time where I'm purely fasted and I'm not having any glucose spikes at all. So that helps a ton. So intermittent fasting with eating and then eating less frequently, which those two things, they go hand in hand, that made a huge difference in just the way that I felt too. Way more productive. I can make an entire video about fasting and how it really helped everything in my life. Maybe way leaner, way more focused, just like a much better way to live. And I have more time to work too, because I'm not having to worry about making meals every 2 hours or whatever. I already mentioned the fiber side of things, started eating a lot more fiber, gut health got better, way less acne. You can see some pictures from during the bulk when I had quite a bit of acne, which I think was a combination of really bad gut health from eating just too much food, but also eating like prepackaged stuff. Like I was buying like guacamole packages rather than like avocados, and just prepackaged stuff, rice, all these other things that had a bunch of preservatives in them, and it made my acne pretty bad. I can make a whole video about acne, but literally nothing has fixed my acne except for cleaning up the diet with gut health. That's the only thing that's ever worked. No special soaps, ointments. I even did Accutane. I got really bad scarring on my back from Accutane when I was a kid. This is the only thing that's fixed acne. Again, whole other video for another time. So yeah, so these are some of the food sources I added. I already mentioned this: black beans, bread, chia seeds, oatmeal. Haven't used any fiber supplements as of yet. Another thing that I did was changing the order of the food, like in which I ate the meals. So I watched this YouTube channel where this guy had like a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. It's a little thing that sits on your arm that tests your glucose spikes. And he would eat the same meals in different orders, and it would make drastic differences in the glucose spike. So from watching that YouTube channel alone, I was like, okay, I should give this a try as well. And so I just started eating fats first, then the proteins, then the carbs. Really, I just eat the fats and the proteins together or whatever. But I just tried to separate them out a little bit. I never actually got a CGM, even though I was supposed to, but it was like when you have no money in your bank account, you're afraid to look at it. It was kind of one of those things. So I didn't actually do that, even though I probably should have. But I just noticed I physically felt better. When I wasn't spiking my glucose as hard, I felt better. I just didn't feel as tired after I would eat. And so the food order was another small thing that was really easy because I didn't have to change any of the food. And so with all of that said, I actually didn't do too much else. There's definitely other things that you could do. There's like metformin and berberine. I did get berberine, but I took it so infrequently that I don't know if I'd really accredit much to it. I was taking it like religiously for like a week. And then every now and then I'd remember, oh, I should probably take it. And then I just kind of forgot that I owned it. So I probably only took it maybe 10 to 15 times over the span of 3-4 months. I'm not saying that I don't recommend it. I just didn't really implement it into my strategy. And luckily I didn't have to. That's how I was able to lower my A1C. And I want to talk about why this even matters in the first place. Outside of just being healthy and not becoming diabetic, insulin is extremely anabolic. Like bodybuilders literally inject insulin because it has such an anabolic response. So from my understanding is your pancreas creates insulin to help to shuttle the food into the right places. Now, when you have too much body fat or you're just eating too much food, it becomes harder. And so bodybuilders will pound extreme amounts of food and they'll use insulin to make sure that it goes to the right place. And so just imagine if you are fat, let's say you're over 20% body fat because you've been bulking for a long time, or you just already were, it's going to be extremely hard to put on muscle because your insulin response doesn't work. And so this idea that being like bulked up helps you gain more muscle, I think is completely backwards. And I personally noticed as this cut has gone down, I've noticed that I've continued to get stronger the entire way up until like maybe the last couple weeks. And again, I've been cutting for over 6 months now. Just the fact that the bodybuilders use it alone should tell you how powerful insulin is. And so obviously we should be trying to modulate this naturally by eating less food, eating less frequently, fasting, things like that. And also makes your life way easier because you can grow with less food if you, again, lower down your metabolism essentially, or you lower down your caloric need, right? And so when I first started working with my coach, that was exactly what he told me is that we need to get you leaner. We need to get you, obviously we need to get you more insulin sensitive because of the issues with my blood work, but also just because I wanted to go into a building phase. And so the cutting phase was extremely necessary to get into a good position to build muscle again and just to be healthy. And so obviously, this is more of a take towards muscle building, obviously, but for overall health reasons, obviously you should do this. But when it comes to trying to build muscle, I think that getting lean first is 100% the move. I think that getting really, really lean, becoming extremely insulin sensitive, getting down to a spot as well where you don't need to eat a lot of food to grow is the way to start. And I'm going to be the experiment for that. I'm doing it right now. And so right now I'm speaking more so theoretically. In the future, I'll update this and I'll be able to show you, how it works and what that does for me on a muscle building front. But also the cool thing is if you get lean and you start building muscle from there, you'll actually see the muscle, you'll like the way you look, and you don't need to keep yo-yoing and trying to gain all this muscle. It's just so that way you can look a certain way someday. You can basically just get there now and then keep working your way up without ever getting too fat. And so that is my overall take on it. If you want to hear more about this and why I think that you should cut before you actually start to put on a bunch of muscle, check out this video that I just made. Overall, final takeaways, don't bulk forever. Like if you're gonna bulk, you need to do it for shorter periods of time. And also when you do bulk, you don't need to excessively bulk. You can bulk on an extra 200, 300 calories above your maintenance. You don't need to pound food. And in fact, there are other ways that you can probably gain more muscle without adding more food, like getting better sleep, making sure your micronutrients are good, like all the extra, bullshit that you skip on. If you did that, you'd probably gain more muscle without needing more food. Also, just training better and training smarter. Be careful about what food choices that you're choosing, because again, these things do matter long term. Do your blood work and figure out where you're at right now, because I had no idea that this was going on. Yep, and so that's how I was able to lower my A1C down to 5.1. And so I did my blood work about a month ago. I'm gonna do my blood work again in about a week, and I will share with you the results again later on here. So if you wanna hear more about that, subscribe for more videos. I'll see you in the next one.